Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I am your host, David Turetsky. Like always, we try and find you the brilliant minds inside and outside the world of human resources to shed light on HR data, HR analytics, and HR technology. Today, as always, we have with us Dwight Brown from Salary.com. Hey, Dwight, how are you?
Good, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And we have with us my great friend for many years, and we just calculated it's kind of over a decade, Bennett Sung. Bennett, how are you?
I am doing good, David. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you very much for joining. I've known Bennett, and I've always treated Bennett with care and respect because Bennett is a thought leader in the world of applicant tracking systems, HRIS, but mostly the recruiting process itself. And Bennett, why don't you give a little background on yourself and where that all came from?
Absolutely. So I started my journey, like most people, I landed in HR and recruiting technology. So my career actually started off in the recruitment marketing space in Honolulu, Hawaii. So
wow.
I decided to venture across the country to Boston, then to Seattle, settle down in the Pacific Northwest. And when the dawn of the internet came about, recruitment marketing had to pivot. So primarily it meant that I needed to change career paths to the software space. And again, coincidentally, I landed in a human resource and benefits administration technology. And it really kind of took its own course from there.
Sure.
Venturing, as you mentioned, spending a good portion of my career at ADP, learning the ropes of working with big companies, lots of salespeople,
sure,
messaging, et cetera. And then kind of, after that particular career path had come to a close, I really kind of took off in my product marketing, recruiting technology career path. So working for brands like Jobscience, which got bought out by Bullhorn, MightyRecruiter, Koru. So covered the landscape of recruiting technologies from applicant tracking systems to staffing technologies to assessments, and now most recently to AI for recruiting. So that's been my career path, and I keep very laser focused on making sure that that steers the right course.
And it's been fascinating working with you because I actually have learned a tremendous amount from you over the years. And anytime I needed to, especially when I was at ADP, anytime I needed help understanding the world of applicant tracking systems, I would always go to my friend Bennett. So Bennett, the one thing that we ask every guest on the HR Data Labs podcast, what does no one know, this one thing that no one know about you?
So my original intentions was never to be in marketing. My intention was to be a veterinarian. And so I enrolled into animal science classes at the University of Hawaii. And it was an unfortunate incident that one of the classes required me to dissect a pregnant cow. No
what a
joke.
Start.
No
what
joke.
A start.
And then I leaned in too much and I inhaled way too much formaldehyde and literally fainted on the cow. No joke. That was my animal science career.
You fainted on the cow.
I just got a mental picture of that.
Yeah, right? And then after that, I said, this is not going to be for me. Even though I love animals and I still love animals, I don't think I could really deal with this part of being a veterinarian. So I made a 360 pivot into economics, accounting, finally got to marketing, and then finished my college career. So anyways, most people didn't know that I had that passion for animals, and that was what I wanted to be.
Sure. Okay.
Now I'm here.
I have nothing to say, which is, as Dwight knows, that is
David,
probably one of the rarest moments in the HR Data Labs podcast.
I have never once seen you speechless, David. Congratulations, Bennett. You got the prize on that one.
Yeah, there you go, Bennett. Leave it to Bennett for absolutely making me speechless. Okay.
Yeah.
That's that. We're going to leave it right there.
That's hilarious. Awesome.
So our topic for today is fascinating. We're going to be talking about the role of artificial intelligence in the recruiting process. And like so many of us who've been out of roles over the last 2 years or 3 or even 4, we've seen a tremendous change in the way in which recruiting systems talk to us, deal with us, whether it's AI and conversational AI, whether it's AI in our candidate, the candidate process, actually entry of the application. Mm-hmm. So this is a very fascinating topic. I can't wait to talk about it.
Hey, everybody. Got a quick question for you. Is your job easy, stress-free, and full of rainbows and sunshine every single day? Yeah, I'd say that's a big fat no. Hi, I'm David Noe, host of Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners, and proud to be part of the Work-Defined community. Take a step down into my Speakeasy live on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we tackle HR and business challenges through raw, uncut, unfiltered conversations. This is HR like you've never heard it before. Bold, real, and full of practical takeaways. Real guests, bold insights, authentic conversations that drive change. Catch every episode on demand through your favorite podcast platform or all the content at speakeasyhr.com.
Same here. It's been a lot of changes in recruiting technology. I think that is a great thing to see. But I think the consistency is the fact that hiring has never changed. The process itself never changes, right? There's nobody they talk about disruption. You know, you're disrupting and creating new technologies to create new experiences. But the actual transformation of the recruiting process really has remained consistent since the 1950s when the CV was born, right, or the resume was born, right? And so it still required job seekers to hand a piece of paper over to the employer to look at their background, and then they make a judgment whether or not they want to hire you at the spot. And so, you know, from that early stage of the resume being born to today, where you start to see and interact and engage with a ton of different types of technologies, the consistency has always been: you submit yourself for, find yourself a job position, you apply for it, you get screened for it, you go through an interview process, you go through a pre-hired checklist, then you go through the offer and acceptance, and boom, you're working on that minute. So, you know, in my vision, the world of where we're living in is we've introduced these waves of new technologies, right? So obviously, the first major change in recruiting happened when the internet kind of came to fruition. It was really kind of became the new channel for classified advertisements, right? Your job, your help wanted ads. That was one of the first major movements in change, but we didn't really change anything. We just shifted the 500-page Boston Globe Sunday help wanted section onto Monster, Koru Mosaic, right?
Quite literally changed that way. Yeah.
Literally. It was a simple pivot, right? It's like, you lost the beauty of all the branding that you got in the help wanted ads, but now you just saw a laundry list of descriptions, which made everybody be able to see what job opportunities. So that was one of the first major waves. And then the other waves that continued to come through, we had then the emergence of social media. So all of a sudden we coined the new term, social recruiting.
Right.
It's just recruiting using social media. It's not a new type of recruiting, right? It's just a new channel of recruiting and engaging with candidates and reaching more people.
Yeah, one would argue, Bennett, if you looked at LinkedIn, it still is a separate entity. Yes, there are some jobs that are posted inside the social media of LinkedIn. Yeah. But LinkedIn has two separate channels.
It really
One
does.
Which is talk, which is the, social media part.
Yeah.
And the other part is, or should be thought leadership, it isn't. But the other part is, here's the job board.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then, then you have the mass array of millions and millions of candidates or people you engage with to match them up, right? So, and then what came about after that was, mobile. So mobile became required a lot of rethinking by technology providers, because now we have this very small device that we still need to present all this information in. We still needed to collect applications. They didn't, at that point, they had not thought through, do I need, is somebody going to really be able to type their entire application on this little phone here?
Right.
And things never change. But of course, again, another wave, that wave, they tried to coin and phrase mobile recruiting. But again, it's just recruiting using a mobile phone.
Yeah, but remember, and we were there when we saw this happen, because I remember when QR codes were starting to come out, and you'd go to a store like TJ Maxx or Marshall's, and I'm using that brand because I specifically remember those use cases there, where you'd walk in the front door and it would say, "We're hiring, here's the QR code."
Yeah.
And you'd be taken through an experience. And, I'm not picking on those two companies specifically, but sometimes when you went in those stores and you hit that QR code, you got the traditional experience of having to enter every single data point.
Yeah.
And then you had the opposite. And I think this is one of the things you're getting to. And so I'm sorry if I'm preempting you, but then you have the new experiences where they say, well, do you just want to use your LinkedIn profile?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so that's the other kind of small wave that happened after mobile, was that whole one notion of one-click apply, right? Like I can use an existing profile that I created on LinkedIn, or maybe I try to use my Indeed and Monster profiles to also kind of create that same experience. Interesting enough, none of that took off.
No.
It didn't, because it circumvented a lot of the applicant tracking processes that come afterwards, right? Like the minimum qualification questionnaire that comes with it. It's like, okay, so now how do I figure out how to send the candidate? Do I have to send the candidate back to go fill out more information? And so it wasn't a very seamless experience to the candidate as it could have been. But it was a good step forward in trying to simplify and get candidates into the funnel.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think it's an important thing. The process of getting the candidate information, and this is from the application perspective as well as enough demographic details to be able to make a judgment call, and the skills and all that other stuff, to make a judgment call on if this person is the right person for me. You're going back, you were talking going back to the 50s, when you typically had to have a cover letter.
Right.
Not an offer letter. You had to have a cover letter. Plus, then you had to give your resume. And the cover letter was almost like your college essay. It had to be a thoughtful conversation with someone you don't know about why this is a good position for you.
Right.
When, you're probably going through that Sunday New York Times looking for a job, any job. You don't know much about it because the thing was literally a 2x2 or a 3x3, size thing.
My
very
eyes
little.
up.
You didn't have a lot of detail, but you're still applying for it. And again, going back to that process, we did those things so that we could present ourselves.
Right.
Nowadays, we're not presenting ourselves to a person. And but our data needs to be complete enough so that you can, as you were talking about, make that judgment call. Why haven't we evolved at all to be able to use those common data records that we have on the internet, whether it's in LinkedIn or other places, that those records exist? Why haven't we come up with one place or one way of doing that in order to be able to get enough demographic data to make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the biggest opportunity and big transformation. I think it would be so nice to have one central area that I can access all my personal and professional information and use that in a way that's useful in things like an application process, or filling out a home loan, or filling out the crazy background check application form. I mean, there's so much redundancy still today in the information that's required and collected in not only hiring, but all sorts of other things in life.
Sure.
And we still haven't found a way to, I think maybe it's a fear of data privacy challenges or such that may present itself to be, who knows? I mean, again, I think there's a lot of people don't change. That's the interesting that they're changing a behavior is monumental. So, I think when I look at recruiting specifically, again, everybody's fearful of making any dramatic change. I mean, how many times, decade over decade, every 5 years, we have this conversation, is the resume going to die soon? Can the resume die soon? Please.
Well,
but it's just morphing. It's just changing in its form.
Sure.
It's changing in its quality. I think the interesting thing that's also surfaced is that there's also this new realization is that recruiter behaviors also need to kind of move with the times, and they need to also understand like what is really predictive of success. Does going to Harvard University different than going to the University of Montana? They make all these biased decisions on brands of colleges.
Or the University of Hawaii in
University of
veterinary
Hawaii.
studies.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. My animal science studies. It's like, what does the brand of the college have to do with your ability to succeed as an employee? Right. So there's all sorts of interesting kind of nuances around the resume, and specifically about how it's being used in that initial matching process, right? So the resume we know is written from a perspective of the job seeker. I'm going to tell you all about myself. They'll try to put it into the language of the employer, but the reality is it's still a very personal document.
I also have to wonder in that process, and I've wondered this as an applicant, who are we building these processes to the benefit of? My perception is that these are really processes that are to the benefit of the recruiter.
Yeah.
In other words, I get thousands of resumes and I have to sit at my desk and go through these resumes.
Yeah.
But we haven't made it easy for the applicants. I still have to, every time I ever applied for a job, I still have to fill out 2 hours worth of an application on a company's website, attach my resume, or are we building it for the applicant or for both? And so I wonder if that may not also factor into the difficulties in the evolution that we've seen and not evolving further than we have.
Yeah, I think technology has always been designed, has primarily been designed for the administrator, the recruiter, the back office purpose, right? To make that process a little bit more streamlined, and also for the increasing complexities of compliance reporting, which is the only reason the ATS was given, came about was I needed to better track all these candidates. The law tells me I have to create this EEO1 report. And I can't go through hundreds of resumes and say, oh, this one has applied for this position. This one I anticipate is this race and ethnicity and gender. It's like, okay, so the applicant tracking system is a compliance tool, and has always been in that compliance nature now. So, I think it's tremendously important to collect as much information about the candidate and to collect that data in a way that can be used to help project future success as an employee. That's the ultimate goal. It's that quality of hire that we're really trying to North Star, trying to continue to achieve and to figure out ourselves. So that is the nature of the kind of the evolution of the recruiting process, the recruiting technologies that have helped support it. And now there's a next generation new movement using AI.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
And that brings us up to our next topic, which is let's talk about the world of conversational AI and the world of recruiting, and how does it improve that experience for the recruiter, for the applicant, as well as for the overall organization?
Yeah. Conversational AI was introduced primarily through chatbots. Right. Whatever your relationship is with a chatbot, good or bad, the chatbot is still surviving and living. And it's seen across every part of the business. It's being used in every part of the business for sure. I would say, as Dwight, you had mentioned the whole complexity as a candidate. Where I feel the benefit of conversational AI is they put candidate first. Conversational AI is really designed, and its benefits come through for the candidate, right? You don't have to register. You have simple conversations through text messaging. I can, go through the application process right within Facebook ads. I could use the QR code and be transitioned into a conversational application, which is just questions and answers. So it's really tremendously been beneficial to the candidate. And interesting enough, regardless what conversational AI tool that you use, and there's been many of them, and we're entering the second generation of chatbots as we speak, the reality is candidates are big fans. We all read through the feedback loops that come in. Oh my goodness, this was such a fun experience. This was so much more efficient. This allowed me to give you more information about myself and put myself forward in the best light. So we've never heard feedback from candidate in that near real time.
But Bennett, let me ask you a stupid question.
Yeah.
Are they asking the old traditional process, or is this a new process that does fill in all the gaps, but does it in a different way? Like, for example, we were talking before about the cover letter and the application. And the resume and the application, actually. Are they filling in the application and getting all the background and skills about the person in this conversation? And how long is it taking?
Great question. I think a lot of the questions and the process hasn't been fully redesigned yet. So you're still being asked a lot of different questions. I think the benefit here is it's faster and easier to type in, and you can pick and choose your answers, for example. So there's a lot of different variations of conversational AI. There's conversational AIs where the candidate can just literally type in a paragraph of information, and the engine is going to say, "Oh, you're looking for a job in Honolulu, Hawaii as a salesperson." Oh, okay, great. And that is, one flavor. I think the more interesting flavor is that this conversation is now being structured. So we're creating a more structured environment so that every candidate is put through the same experience. It's actually a replacement of what I would say the phone screen is today.
Sure.
Right? It's usually the conversational chatbot comes in the minute that you apply. So the minute that you've applied, then I'm going to be circumvented back to say, I need for you to go start a conversation. We want to learn more about you. We're going to dive deeper into the experiences that you've just outlined in your application.
But let me ask you a stupid question, though.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, and I know where you're talking about the start is that happens here. For many of us, when we get into the application process, something about this job is interesting to us.
Right.
It's almost like, and I know you've gone through these processes too, but let's think about consumer world where you're applying for a car loan, or you like a car and you're going in to look at the car.
Right.
And and they ask you for a bunch of details, but then it starts flipping to a conversation about what would you like in the car and how do you get it?
Yeah.
And a lot of things are taken as a given. First of all, I have a license. Second of all, I can afford this. Third of all, there's a lot of other things. But then it goes over and it becomes serious. You provide your social security number. And now the conversation gets deeper and gets more serious.
Right.
And in the same way, especially when we're applying for a job, it has to get somewhat more serious where we are giving our social security number. And then the company can use big data and find out all about us. Have they had jobs in the same, background? They can go to Work Number. And get all of the background from the person about where they've worked and, what the from and to dates are on those jobs.
For sure.
So there's a bunch of big data that we can find out in the application process that we never, ever have to ask somebody about.
Right.
Why don't we do that? I mean, is it FCRA? Is there a rule against doing things like that?
There isn't. I think we just haven't explored those levels of integration touch points, right? So I think right now we're still at the very elementary phase of leveraging data points from a job description to help create the screening questions. We are, we haven't really kind of pulled in the other pieces of the ecosystem to help drive a lot more efficiencies and to amplify the existing data that we do have. That's a great viewpoint for the future of conversational AI, where we can actually pull in a lot of this data and not have to ask them. And, I think we are seeing a little bit of that in terms of, for example, a lot of the integrations of conversational AI are two ways with your applicant tracking system. So I will look you up if you've already applied for a job. I will look you up as to see what, are you still working, at ADP? Are you still a product manager? We can ask those kinds of questions because we're looking into the applicant tracking system for existing data that we can use so that we can verify. Because the real goal that most conversational AI tools are trying to get to is, are you interested? Are you qualified? And you're available? Those are the three factors.
And that gets to Dwight's question about helping the recruiter, right?
Yeah.
All of this is being set up to help the recruiter get a stable of or a bench of good candidates for that role.
Yes.
And then the AI is going to rank those candidates by their usefulness and by their, as you said before, their probability of success.
Right.
So let's turn this around a little bit and let's talk about what's happening in the world of AI at the interview stage. Because if you have the stable of candidates, if you have that bench of candidates, how does it help getting you through to actually finding the right one?
Yeah, I think so. So this interview stage has been an enigma for its lifetime. We have not had a chance to understand what's happening inside the interview until now. Now there's this new AI technology tools that sit inside your virtual digital interviews. And they are listening, transcribing, and ultimately will be analyzing the data.
And even watching.
And sometimes watching. Yeah. And there are other circumstances of watching. That one is a little bit more precarious and a little bit more dangerous, if I was to say, because I learned very early on when I made a detour into body-worn cameras for police departments that they realized that facial detection was very discriminatory,
highly biased.
Absolutely. So those law enforcement said no to facial detection, and now just recently HR has said no to that too. So this is a little different. So the tool the AI that that is working with inside the interview, its intentions are purely to surface behaviors, surface topics that are being talked about by the candidate, trying to measure sentiment. It's voice to text is one of the most complex technology applications today. It's because you think about it, all the requirements he sent me about just being part of a podcast. We can't go tell a candidate, we need for you to set up this, and this, and this, and this, so we can get the clearest audio possible. We have to deal with a lot of faulty audios.
But remember, there was an effort underway, maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, because of some of the video interviewing technologies, to actually send candidates a video camera.
Oh, I remember those. I still collected them.
Yeah, right. But there is, you can tell every person now, and everybody has a smartphone now, basically, that has a camera.
Yeah.
So asking people to do video isn't as much of a problem as it was maybe 5 years ago. Even 3 years ago, maybe. Everybody has an iPad. Well, pretty much everybody has either an iPad or a Samsung tablet or an iPhone. Something, right? So what you're saying is that there is really good analysis happening. There's data that's being collected in the interview process to be able to predict, is this person going to have the right culture fit and the right skills as they're talking? We're kind of giving them a SBS test to see if they actually really know what they're talking about. And we can judge it based on their facial expressions, based on their voice inflection, and based on that, as you were saying, that really important data that you're collecting, which is supposed to go speech to text.
Right.
And how do we judge and how do we get those nuggets out of that, right?
Yeah. I think we're still a little early on of this technology being used to make decisions, right? So it's not going to immediately say, that is the future roadmap of interview intelligence. Today, interview intelligence is, we're still trying to understand, we're still trying to do the basics of doing the transcription of voice to text. We are building models to help understand, various behaviors, like, for example, interruptions. And if you, as a recruiter, interrupt the candidate, we need to determine, is that a good interruption or was that a bad interruption? Right. So there's some science, there's some additional science that needs to happen, and there's still some human intervention that needs to go into those audio files and mark the data points as being, a positive interruption, a negative interruption. Is it, are you showcasing patience? Are you being impatient? And the likes. There are definitely some behaviors, like how fast we're all talking, that is very easy to calculate. There's other behaviors that are reflective of the interviewer's style that we all are trying to measure, but it requires somebody who has a linguistics background to help understand the behavior of what they're hearing as to be whether or not that interruption is good or bad.
So let me just try and summarize a little bit, because this is a really important part. We're collecting a lot of data now. Mm-hmm. And at some point, we need to then regress that data against candidate success. Like, I'll just give you one metric that I like looking at, which is new hire turnover, right? Mm. So if we look at candidate success in new hire turnover versus the interviewer who brought them in, or the source of the candidate, or something like that,
sure,
then we're learning not just for the sourcing or the sourcing side of the recruiting process, the interviewing process side, but maybe the entire process itself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've exposed the interview, right, which is, and are building and collecting data, there's a lot of insight, a lot of data points within the interview that could be indicators of, offer acceptance rates, retention. So, and most importantly, it's also being used to help measure the efficacies that's being put forth in interviewer and DEI training. This is a change management tool. This is not your traditional data collection compliance application anymore. So that is the initial purpose of AI, and it's going to continue to build itself out so that it becomes much more effective in decision support.
So, Bennett, we talked a lot about the current processes and where they've come from in the world of recruiting and recruiting technology. We've talked about how conversational AI has been introduced to the world of recruiting. And then we've talked about using AI in the interviewing stage. And I think you brought up some really phenomenal points that I think our listeners are going to really love. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we close?
I think the important thing is that organizations need to start at the candidate journey with a conversation. Give the candidates this opportunity to engage with you as a brand. And you can use automation to get to the slate of candidates that you are using. So leverage conversational AI to really cast that wider net so that every single person that applied has had a conversation with you. That is mission critical. That's how you start building an inclusive workforce environment. So that is the one thing that I love for organizations to really think through, is that to create inclusivity is the starting point of your diversity initiatives. It's not the middle. So if I was to reverse the acronyms, it would start with the I. So that is what I feel. And that's where this whole topic of conversational AI can come into play, because not all the candidates are being treated equal. Not all the candidates are being talked to. So at the early stage of the hiring process, just start the conversation using conversational AI to help to allow the candidates to feel that they're being heard and they are able to give their feedback. And that is what I'd like to leave the audience with.
Nothing is worse than just getting an email 10 seconds after you've hit the apply button telling you, while you have phenomenal credentials, we're looking at other candidates.
Yes. The worst engagement conversation ever, for sure.
And it happens to all of us.
Right? Exactly.
So, yeah.
So,
Bennett, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
Dwight, thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us, Bennett. This has been a fascinating topic. This is, I would say that next to seeing the doctor, to me, the most personal human process that any of us ever go through is the recruiting process.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be interesting to see the intersection of AI with the human process and how we balance that. So thanks for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's important to think about the fact that AI plus humans win. It's not AI or human only. So,
and there is a topic for a movie that we're going to be writing the script of. And it's not dystopian. It will not be a dystopian movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the HR Data Labs podcast. We appreciate your support. If you found value in it, please hit the subscribe button. And if you know somebody else who might like this episode or other episodes, please send it their way. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.